Well, you have a prediction on the Manafort trial?
I think he might be not guilty because this whole thing is so many twists and turns and so much hype and expectation that I don't know, but I am curious to see what happens if he's not guilty. What happens to the Mueller investigation?
I'm not going to make a prediction until we hear from our next guest, and that is Brad Micklin.
That is a trick question, David.
Brad Micklin is an attorney who joins us here in studio. Brad, I'm going to ask about Manafort in just a sec, but the other topic that's sort of swirling out there involving President Trump and his defense team is this issue of collusion. The president has now said no collusion, but if there was collusion, it's not a crime. Right. Technically, he's correct. There's nothing in the federal code about collusion, but doesn't that miss the point? I mean, if you work with a foreign national and you get something of value to your campaign, that's against the law.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's playing semantics with the American people, and when it comes out, it's not going to be well received because collusion is just planning to defraud, where conspiracy is planning to do something unlawful. So it's a word choice. So instead of using collusion, we spell it as conspiracy, and we have a crime. So I don't think it's going to really fall too well if that does later come out that there's a conspiracy.
Right, the crime is the conspiracy. That's on the books as a crime, and collusion, the word collusion is not on the books. So technically, but basically it's the same thing.
Yeah, I don't think the statutes across the nation use the word collusion, but they certainly do use conspiracy.
But to be clear, if somebody colludes or somebody works with a foreign national in your campaign, and it's to do something that is not of, say, value to your campaign. Suppose they were talking about policy, that is legal. So even if they had a meeting at Trump Tower or wherever they did, and they're talking about, okay, here's what our policy is going to be, as long as the Russians are not providing some benefit to the campaign like dirt or money, that's legal.
Sure. You can conspire to do something that's lawful. The key is doing something unlawful, which is why it's an important point. Everybody's talking about that there's supposed to be no tie to the Russian investigation in the Manafort trial, but that's actually not accurate entirely, because I think there was a pretrial decision that states that there was one conversation with a bank officer where he was promised influence in either the campaign or after the election. So there's going to be a thread that's going to tie this Manafort trial possibly to the collusion and the Russian investigation.
Let's talk about the trials. 12 jurors, 6 men, 6 women. How could anyone guarantee that they're impartial given the wall-to-wall coverage of the Russia investigation?
I don't think anybody can be completely impartial. I mean, you're hoping that you're as impartial as possible and that you can separate the facts from your own personal beliefs. But everybody from the judge to the jurors to the attorneys, they're all people. We're all going to go in with our preconceived ideas, and it's going to influence how we view the testimony and the ultimate decision.
I was struck that the prosecution estimated this trial would only last 3 weeks. Normally, these kinds of fraud and tax trials are at least 2 months. Is this an indication that prosecutors are aiming for a very tight, narrow case?
It's hard to say. I think that this case is almost like killing a fly with a sledgehammer. They're going in with 18 different charges in 2 different states. There's no way that they can have this done that quickly unless they're going to just present a lot of documents that are going to be boring and dry for the jury. But they must be very clear that that's what they have, because they're putting them on for 305 years of sentencing.
Manafort's right-hand man, Rick Gates, he turned state witness, and the defense already is arguing that he's an unreliable witness. Do you see him testifying during this court?
I believe he will be testifying. I think that's part of his plea deal, was that he's going to testify in return for leniency in his sentencing. Not really sure what his sentencing was inside the plea, but I'm almost certain he's going to be testifying.
And the strategy with the defense knowing that Gates is going to be a prosecution witness, and on their first day in opening arguments, the defense said Paul Manafort didn't know what Rick Gates was doing. This was all Rick Gates that was lining his own pockets. Paul Manafort was oblivious to it, didn't know. Paul Manafort was there traveling around the world while Rick Gates was cooking the books, essentially. Is that a good defense strategy when you know, okay, the entire prosecution case, not the entire case, but a big part of it is going to rest on this prosecution witness? If you can get the jury to focus on that prosecution witness and away from your client, is that helpful?
I think so, and I think that's the whole approach. I think that Mueller's looking to make this like his first big domino to fall. And if he can get Gates to testify against Manafort and he can get any kind of conviction out of these 18 different charges, then he can at least say, we did something, we were successful, and then go move on and have political clout behind it.
But as far as the Manafort defense strategy, for them to pin so much from the beginning on discrediting Gates as opposed to necessarily defending Manafort?
I don't think they have much other choice, because Gates is going to go out there as his partner and testify in some way or another that they committed these crimes and that he knew about it. The only way you can do that as a defense attorney is to discredit the testimony in the first place. I think that's what they were trying to do in their opening arguments today.
We know the president loves to tweet. He loves to tweet about what he calls a witch hunt. If he tweets out about this court case, is there any legal issues that he might be trying to influence the judge in this case?
I don't think so. I mean, he has been unusually quiet, but I don't think that any tweet that he's going to make is going to influence the judge, and I don't think there's any way to stop him from doing it anyway.
I asked Michael Shore at the top, and it was sort of a joke about what is a, ostrich feather jacket. But this does feel like, a lot of trials, in order to make it relatable to a jury, you put something in there about the defendant that is way beyond what most normal Americans can conceive of, and that is a $15,000 ostrich feather jacket. And right from the start, you're painting the defendant as somebody who's not like you and me.
Also, and I agree, but I also think they're trying to make him look like he must have been doing something to maintain this lifestyle, because the facts are that he was very successful at a point in time until around 2014, and that's when it dried up and he started with the bank fraud. So if he had this lifestyle in place already and his income dried up, then he had to do something to maintain it. And I think that's where these pieces are going to come in.
And the argument is also he signed on for free to the Trump campaign because he thought he might get some more business dealings once that happened and Trump lost,
right,
which he didn't. All right, Attorney Brad Micklin, always a pleasure to have you on. Thanks for your insight.
And based on what Brad says, based on what he just said, I'm convinced now that Manafort's going to be found guilty.
Wait, you're making you're saying what you think?
Well, I'm saying what I think. Well, you offered the feeling that you think that
but
he's
then you criticized me for it,
well,
so now you're doing it too.
I'm inviting you to criticize me, but I do like the idea that they're taking a sledgehammer to a fly.
I like that metaphor. It's a good metaphor.
And it is, look, it's a lot that they're throwing at him. And even if they can just get a couple of charges to stick, that's a victory for the special counsel. And then they've got another trial still to come.
Fair enough.
You can criticize me.
I'll do it after the show. Still ahead, Facebook's